The luxury dealership went silent the moment Ethan Parker stepped out of his rusty pickup truck with his little daughter beside him. Salesman smirked. Customers stared. One manager coldly told him, "This showroom isn't for people like you." Humiliated, Ethan quietly picked up his daughter's backpack and walked toward the exit until a black executive car screeched to a stop outside. The dealership's female CEO, Victoria Hale, stepped out, then froze when she saw the battered pickup in the parking lot. Her face turned pale. Because 10 years earlier, that exact truck had once saved her life, and the man they just insulted was the hero nobody recognized. Ethan Parker was the kind of man the world had a habit of overlooking. At 38, he had the hands of someone who had worked hard since the day he was old enough to hold a wrench-calloused palms, knuckles permanently stained with grease no matter how long he scrubbed. He was a mechanic at a modest garage on the east side of the city, the kind of place where the coffee maker was older than half the staff, and the fluorescent light in the break room had been flickering for 3 years without anyone replacing it. He didn't complain. Complaining required energy he preferred to spend elsewhere. He spent it on Lily. Lily was 8 years old. With her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness, a combination that made her the most lovable and occasionally exhausting creature Ethan had ever encountered. She had a gap between her front teeth and a laugh that started somewhere deep in her belly and arrived without warning like a summer storm. She was without question the only good thing Ethan had left. The truck he drove was a 1994 Ford F-150, faded red, the way autumn leaves go brown before they fall, not with elegance, but with the quiet resignation of something that had simply endured. The front bumper wore a dent from a parking lot incident in 2011. The passenger side mirror was held in place with electrical tape and hope. On cold mornings, it started only after the third try, and in summer, the air conditioning produced something closer to mild disappointment than cool air. But Ethan kept it running. He always kept it running. It was the last thing he and Sarah had bought together back when they were young and slightly reckless, and believed that a reliable truck was the foundation of a solid life. They were not wrong. They were just not given enough time to prove it. Sarah had been gone for 3 years now. Pancreatic cancer, which is the kind of illness that doesn't ask permission and doesn't leave room for negotiation. She was 34 when she was diagnosed. She was 35 when she died. And Ethan had been keeping everything together ever since the garage shifts, the school pickups, the bedtime stories, the grocery runs, the parent-teacher conferences, the nightmares Lily still had sometimes. The mornings when neither of them felt like getting out of bed, but got out anyway. That was what love looked like from the inside. Not romantic, not cinematic, just relentless. He had been saving for the SUV for 2 years, setting aside a small amount each week from his paycheck. $40 here, $60 there, whatever the week allowed after groceries and utilities and the occasional school field trip fee, skipping the lunch specials at the diner, driving past the new action releases at the theater, not renewing the streaming service when it increased its price. Not for himself, for Lily, because the highway felt different now than it had before Sarah died. Like the road itself had become a place where terrible things could happen without warning, and he needed to know his daughter was surrounded by something built to protect her. He had done the math obsessively. He had a spreadsheet on his phone, the kind of spreadsheet that a mechanical engineer keeps precise, color-coded, updated every Sunday morning over coffee. The numbers were finally right. He had been ready for 3 weeks, but he had waited for a Saturday when the weather was clear. And Lily was in a good mood because he wanted the day to feel like what it was. A good day, a day they had worked toward together, even if Lily didn't know all the details of the working. He had chosen the dealership carefully. He had read the ratings online late at night, squinting at safety scores and crash tests and parent reviews. He told Lily about the plan on a Tuesday morning, and she had clapped her hands and said she wanted one the color of blueberries, which made him laugh for the first time in a week. They dressed up a little that Saturday. Lily wore the yellow cardigan that still smelled like the detergent Sarah used to buy, and Ethan put on the clean-colored shirt he saved for special occasions. They drove across town in the old pickup, the engine grumbling its familiar protest at every red light, and they pulled into the parking lot of the largest and most prestigious dealership in the city just after 10 in the morning. The building was enormous, all glass and steel, and polished surfaces that caught the autumn sunlight like a hall of mirrors. The cars inside gleamed under recessed lighting as though they were sacred objects displayed in a cathedral. Ethan turned off the engine, and for a moment both he and Lily just looked at the building in silence. Then she said, "Daddy, do they have blueberry ones?" And he said, "Let's go find out." The moment they stepped out of the truck, everything shifted. It was subtle at first, the kind of shift you feel before you can name it. A salesman near the entrance glanced at the pickup, then at Ethan, then at Lily, and let his expression settle into something carefully neutral that said more than contempt ever could. Another salesman on the floor, deeply engaged in conversation with a couple in matching cashmere coats, looked over and made the decision not to look again. 2 women near the front display vehicle turned toward each other and murmured something that ended in a quiet, shared smile. Lily didn't notice. She walked with her eyes wide, touching nothing, amazed by everything. Ethan noticed. He always noticed. He was the kind of man who had learned to carry those moments quietly, folding them away somewhere they couldn't reach him while he was busy being a father. He tried to catch someone's eye.
He smiled.
He waited. No one came. A family in linen and leather was helped immediately. A man who arrived in a silver sedan and wore a watch that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent was guided to the premium floor with warm handshakes and genuine smiles. Ethan waited 11 minutes by the clock on the far wall. Then Lily tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, that man keeps looking at us." She meant the salesman near the velvet rope, a young man in a pressed suit who had been watching them with the fixed attention of someone monitoring a problem that hadn't quite become an incident yet. Ethan heard the comment from somewhere to his left. A man in a linen blazer, speaking not quite quietly enough, to the woman beside him. "You know how it is. Some people just come in here to take pictures." Lily heard it too. Ethan saw the way her chin dropped, the way the brightness left her eyes for a moment, like a lamp with a loose connection. That was the moment the manager appeared. He was a broad man with the confident posture of someone who believed himself to be doing the world a favor by existing in it. His name tag said Raymond. He walked toward Ethan with the deliberate pace of a man who had done this before and felt perfectly comfortable doing it again. He spoke in a low voice, but not so low that the nearby customers could not hear if they chose to, and several of them chose to. "Sir," Raymond said, "I think there may be some confusion. Our vehicles here begin at $65,000. We also have pre-owned locations across town that might be a better fit for what you're looking for." Ethan looked at him steadily. There was no heat in his eyes, which was perhaps the most unsettling thing about his expression, just a calm, worn patience. "I'm not confused," Ethan said. "I've been saving for this for 2 years. I want to buy a family SUV. I have the money." Raymond's smile did not reach his eyes. It never had. "Sir, these vehicles aren't really what?" Ethan asked quietly. Raymond paused. He was a man who had learned to rely on implication rather than statement, to let the space between words do the cruelest work. He looked at Ethan's shirt, clean but not pressed. He looked at the boots worn but not fashionable. He looked briefly through the glass at the battered red pickup in the parking lot. Then he said with the tone of someone offering charity, "The vehicles here cost more than most people's homes." Lily's hand found Ethan's. She held it with both of hers the way she did when she was scared, but trying not to show it. Ethan felt the grip. He did not look down at her. If he looked down at her right now, he would lose the composure he was fighting to hold. And he could not do that in front of her. He could not let her see him break. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He tried to find the words that were dignified without being desperate, firm without being angry, human without being vulnerable. He couldn't find them in time because Raymond turned slightly, a practiced, dismissive pivot, and gestured toward the exit with a motion so casual it was almost contemptuous, and said, "There's a lovely pre-owned lot on Whitmore Avenue, I think, would be more your speed." A woman nearby lowered her eyes. A man in a blazer pretended to examine a brochure. One younger customer, perhaps early 20s, still new enough to the world to feel uncomfortable with what he was witnessing, pulled out his phone. He began filming. Ethan was already turning. He picked up Lily's backpack from the floor where she'd set it to look at a display. He held out his hand to her and she took it without a word, and they walked toward the exit with the quiet dignity of people who had survived worse things and knew it. His jaw was tight. His eyes were dry. He did not look at Raymond. He did not look at anyone. He looked at the door, just the door. They were 3 steps from it when the sound of brakes, sharp, sudden, definitive, cut through the lobby. Hush. A black executive car had stopped outside, not parked, stopped. The way things stop when the driver is too occupied with what they have just seen to complete a routine action. Every head in the showroom turned toward the glass. A woman stepped out. Victoria Hale was 35 years old, though in any given room she carried the weight of someone who had lived twice that inexperience. She was lean and precise, dressed in a charcoal blazer over a silk blouse the color of winter sky. Her dark hair pulled back without a strand out of place. She had the kind of stillness that made rooms quieter when she entered them. Not because she demanded attention, but because she simply occupied a certain gravity that made attention inevitable. She was the CEO of Hale Automotive Group, which owned this dealership, and 11 others across the state. She visited without announcement. That was the point. She had learned years ago that the most honest version of any operation was the one you saw when no one knew you were coming. She had intended to walk through the showroom floor with her eyes open and her conclusions private. She had taken 3 steps into the parking lot when she stopped moving entirely. The old red pickup truck. It sat at an awkward angle in the first parking space, its dented front bumper glinting in the morning light, the electrical tape on the passenger mirror catching a brief gleam of October sun. She had not seen that truck in 10 years. She had in her quieter moments thought about it, but she had not seen it. She stood very still, the way a person stands when memory strikes faster than reason. Her driver, Marcus, said nothing. He had worked for her long enough to recognize the difference between her thinking silences and her remembering silences. This was the second kind. Victoria stepped forward slowly. She put her hand on the hood of the truck, and through some convergence of physics and emotion, it felt warm. And that warmth moved through her palm and up her arm and arrived somewhere behind her sternum as a kind of ache she hadn't expected. 10 years. The memory did not come gently. It came all at once. The way cold water comes when you step into it complete, total without warning. She had been 25 years old and newly promoted to regional director of her father's company. Driving alone on Route 14 in the middle of January, the kind of January that arrives in the Midwest like an argument no one can win, she had been on her way back from a client site running 40 minutes behind schedule, telling herself the roads were fine because she needed them to be fine. The snow was falling in sheets by the time she realized the road conditions were worse than the radio had indicated. She had taken the curve too wide, or the ice had reached the tarmac before anyone had marked it, or some combination of both. It didn't matter which because the result was the same. Her sedan slid sideways off the road down an embankment and came to rest against a stand of birch trees with a violence that filled the cabin with a sound she still sometimes heard in sleep. The airbag had deployed. The windshield had spiderwebbed. She was alive, stunned, her ears ringing. Her seatbelt cutting across her collarbone with the insistence of something that had just done its job. Smoke was beginning to rise from under the hood, and she understood in the specific crystalline way that fear sharpens understanding that she needed to get out of the car before it became something she couldn't get out of. She couldn't get the door open. She tried the window. The mechanism was dead. The smoke was thickening. She could smell something she did not want to name. She was pressing herself against the passenger side, trying to think clearly through the ringing and the cold and the rapidly narrowing options when she heard it. Tires on gravel above, and then boots on frozen ground, moving fast, purposeful, without hesitation, and then a voice, calm and direct, that said through the cracked glass, "I'm going to get you out. Don't move your neck. Can you hear me?" She could. She said yes. The window came in. He broke it clean at the corner, covered the glass with his jacket, and reached in and unlocked the door from the inside. He pulled her out with one arm across her back and one beneath her knees, the way you carry someone who might be hurt in ways that aren't yet visible. And he got her 20 FT up the embankment before the engine caught. And the smoke became fire, and the fire became noise. She was sitting in the snow, wrapped in his jacket, shaking. He was kneeling beside her with blood on his left hand from the glass, asking her name, asking if she could feel her feet, asking all the things that needed to be asked. She told him her name. He told her his. It was Ethan. His truck, the same red pickup she was looking at right now, idled on the road above them, its hazard lights blinking orange in the white afternoon. She had been airlifted to the hospital 40 minutes later. Mild concussion, 2 cracked ribs, nothing that didn't heal. She had sent a thank you letter to the address he gave her. It came back undelivered. She never found him. She had thought occasionally that she should have tried harder. She had thought, with the kind of guilt that is easily rationalized, that it was probably fine that people like him didn't need things from people like her, that her gratitude existed even if she had no way to deliver it. She had been wrong about that. She was about to understand how wrong. Victoria straightened. She looked through the glass of the showroom. She could see the back of a man in a blue shirt holding a small girl's hand, walking toward the exit with a posture that said he was holding himself together by will alone. She walked through the doors. Her voice when she spoke was quiet, but absolute. "Whose truck is that in the parking lot?" Everyone turned. No one answered immediately. The lobby felt smaller than it had a moment before. Raymond, who had been watching the father and daughter approach the exit with the quiet satisfaction of a problem being tidied away, turned toward Victoria with an expression that shifted recognition, then the beginning of alarm before settling on professional courtesy. "Miss Hale, we weren't expecting. Whose truck is in the parking lot?" Victoria said again. Not louder, just slower. The young customer with the phone glanced down at his screen, then back up. Lily turned around first because children often sense the change in a room before adults admit it. She looked at the woman in the charcoal blazer, and the woman in the charcoal blazer looked past her at the man beside her. And something happened in Victoria's face that Ethan, when he turned, could not immediately name. It was recognition. Not the polite kind, the other kind, the kind that comes from having once owed someone something that was never repaid. "Are you Ethan Parker?" she asked. The name landed in the room like a stone in still water. Ethan stared at her. He searched his memory and found her face in a place he hadn't accessed in years. A snowy embankment, a smoldering car, a woman wrapped in his jacket, asking questions about herself, the way people do when they're checking whether they're still real. Victoria, he said it wasn't a question. He just said it as if confirming a fact that had unexpectedly become relevant again. Her expression held steady, but something shifted beneath it, a relief so old it had almost become grief. "Yes," she said. Then she turned to Raymond. "Tell me what happened here today." Raymond hesitated. He was a man with good instincts for self-preservation, and he was using all of them now, calculating the distance between what had happened and what could be claimed to have happened. He opened his mouth. The young customer with the phone stepped forward instead. "He filmed it," Lily said. Her voice was small and clear in the silent room, a child's voice saying the only true thing. The young man, to his credit, looked at Raymond, then at Victoria, then held out his phone without being asked. Victoria watched the video. She watched it once. She handed the phone back without a word. Then she looked at Raymond for a long moment. The kind of look that doesn't require volume or expression to communicate everything necessary, and said, "Lock the showroom. No new customers for the next hour." Raymond's face went the color of old chalk. Two salesmen behind him found sudden interest in the middle distance. The couple in cashmere coats exchanged a glance and began quietly collecting their things. The lobby, which had earlier been a place of ambient luxury and polished surfaces, had become something else entirely, a place where a truth was being uncovered, one layer at a time, with the patient and merciless efficiency of someone who knew exactly where to pull. Victoria walked out through the glass doors to the parking lot, and after a moment's pause, Ethan and Lily followed. The three of them stood beside the old red pickup in the pale autumn morning, and for a while none of them said anything. Victoria ran her hand along the side panel of the truck in a way that was not performative. It was the gesture of someone confirming that a memory is real, that the thing you have carried in your mind for a decade actually exists in the material world. "I looked for you," she said. "I sent a letter to the address you gave me." "I moved the next spring," Ethan said. "After Sarah got sick, we needed to be closer to the hospital." Victoria nodded slowly. She looked at Lily, who was watching her with frank and open curiosity, the way children watch things that seem important to adults. "Is this your daughter?" "This is Lily," Ethan said. Lily said, "Hi." Victoria said, "Hi, Lily." There was a pause. Then Lily, with the directness that is the exclusive property of 8-year-olds, said, "Daddy fixes this truck all the time. He's been fixing it since before I was born. Mom used to say it was his other child." Something crossed Victoria's face. "Your mom sounds like she was funny," she said. "She was the funniest," Lily said simply. The word was past tense. It sat in the morning air between them. Ethan cleared his throat. "She passed 3 years ago," he said in the even practiced voice of someone who has said that sentence enough times that the mechanism of saying it has become separate from the feeling of it. Victoria looked at him for a moment without speaking. And in that silence, she was recalibrating not just the morning, but 10 years of accumulated assumptions about where that man had ended up. "You came in today to buy a family car," she said. "Yeah, for Lily. Safety ratings," he said. "The highway scares me now, more than it used to." He didn't explain further. He didn't need to. She understood the sentence completely. Victoria reached into her jacket for her phone and made a call. Ethan didn't catch all of it. She stepped a few feet away and spoke quietly. But he heard his name, and he heard the phrase family vehicle, and he heard the words top of the line. He looked down at Lily, who was leaning against the side of the pickup and examining the electrical tape on the mirror with the concentrated attention of a scientist. "What do you think is happening?" she asked without looking up. "I think," Ethan said carefully, "that something is about to happen that I'm not sure I know how to handle."